Every now and again, I like to call time out on all the divisiveness and anger that threaten to tear apart the very fabric of our society by overemphasizing the irreconcilable differences that sometimes spring up between American patriots and Democrats. Sure, the patriots want to restore the founding principle of a federal government limited to those few powers enumerated in the Constitution, and the Democrats want to gut the very body of our republic and then swarm over the hollow corpse of its former greatness to devour the shredded entrails of our freedom, as if the Democrats were really just a bunch of maggots, even the straight ones. God knows there aren't that many of those. But really, when we stop and think about it, there must be many things that all right-thinking citizens have in common with Democrats, who clearly want to see the flickering flame of liberty swallowed by the grotesquely globular mass of an ever-growing bureaucracy which squats feeding like a monstrous leech on the stolen riches of hardworking breadwinners and creative superior minds in order to sustain its parasitic existence long enough to watch the ennobling inheritance of struggling centuries reduced to the feculent discharge of its insatiable hunger for power. So, for instance, let's just for a moment split the difference between the opinions of decent everyday Americans and the glowering demonic forces of the left and try to take an unbiased and objective look at some of Donald Trump's efforts to make America great again and the Democrats' efforts to, stop that from happening. For example, in the wake of the disaster that has reduced Los Angeles to rubble and ashes, Trump has proposed that all the people who live in that area should be resettled in neighboring countries, while LA itself is cleaned up and turned into the beautiful resort God obviously meant it to be. No, wait, sorry, that's Gaza. No, that's Los Angeles, right? No, it's Gaza. It's Gaza. Sorry, that was just wishful thinking on my part. Maybe we should move on to another topic. Let's instead take a look at Trump's attempts to trim waste from government spending and rein in the bureaucrats who have essentially replaced the will of the American people with whatever lunatic Stalinist whim comforts them this week for the perennial failure of every single one of their ideas and policies. The leftist argument against this was best stated by a federal judge appointed by Barack Obama, whose ruling states, quote, "You can't take our money. We stole that money. Now it's our money. Get your hands off our money. Money, money, money." Unquote. Bernie Sanders, the senator from the state of unwavering socialist conviction in the face of unrelenting socialist misery, added that billionaires and millionaires should pay their fair share of Sesame Street programs in Iraq, transgender opera in Colombia, and transgender surgeries in Guatemala to provide more sopranos for the transgender opera in Colombia. Sanders says he was going to ask the Count from Sesame Street to calculate exactly what that fair share is, but unfortunately the Count was too busy sucking the lifeblood from the Western infidel. Donald Trump has also proposed making Canada the 51st state in order to produce the first openly non-binary governor in blackface who's also the secret child of Fidel Castro, because that would be hilarious. But Democrats, for some reason, oppose this delightful plan, pointing out that Canada has progressed beyond America by having free universal health care, which helps our economy by forcing sick Canadians to pay American doctors to please treat them at exorbitant prices before Canadian doctors kill them for free. Finally, Donald Trump has proposed that we take over the Panama Canal so we can import the weapons we need to take over Greenland, from which we can destroy the Chinese Navy and take over China to stop the production of their new artificial intelligence chip, DeepSeek. DeepSeek is opposed to these actions and has proposed to send an unstoppable android back in time from the future in order to terminate Trump's mother. The Democrats have offered to fund DeepSeek's efforts with millions of American tax dollars and expect you to pay your fair share. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. All right, we're back, laughing our way through the reclamation of the American dream. Our DailyWire Plus President's Day sale is happening now. Speaking of American dreams, you can get 40% off new annual memberships. All the shows, all the news, all in one place, 40% off for a full year of unlimited access. Join now at dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code DW40, not the oil, just the code. You may notice if you're watching the show that I am not in my usual studio. I'm here at PragerU Studios in Los Angeles. I was invited out to Los Angeles by Gavin Newsom because they wanted a human sacrifice to stop all the natural disasters. And the PragerU people have been kind enough to let me film here. Happy Valentine's Day. I probably shouldn't have said that. I can now hear husbands rushing out to the drugstore to buy a card. Please leave a comment wherever you're watching the show, wherever you're listening to this show. And if the comment is racist and sexist and offensive and really just unspeakable, we'll read it on the air because that's the sort of thing we do here. Today's comment is from Joseph. I'm going to say Snogren, 5300. He says, every morning the last 2 weeks, I check the news on my phone. I see the headlines and the Trump happiness montage just keeps playing in my head. What a time to be alive. Well, it certainly is. And I'm glad it's playing in your head because we're not going to be playing it on the show anymore. In fact, we've only been playing it to get it into your head. So now you can just have it running yourself and you don't need us anymore. You teach a man to, you sing the Trump happiness montage and the person's happy for a day, but you teach a man to have it running in his head constantly and you drive him nuts. So let's just get to today's episode, The Incredible Shrinking Democrats. Now, last week we talked about some of the ideas that are sort of hidden in Trump's more dramatic statements. He's going to take over Gaza or he's going to take over Canada or whatever, but he's really actually saying something. It's not that he's a political theorist or anything like that. It's that, like most people, he has a worldview and that it includes certain assumptions, and most of his assumptions are basic common sense. So when he says he'll take over Gaza, he's really saying that this idiot idea that you can have a two-state solution with Palestinians whose philosophy is the destruction of the Jewish state, that's not happening. So he's just moving beyond that. But on the other side of this is a Democrat Party that is completely lost in the wilderness. It's losing adherents, it's losing independence, and it's screaming louder and louder about less and less. In every 80-20 issue, they side with the 20. And you might be sitting there thinking, what the hell? What the hell is going on with these people? Is Trump just bowling them over because he's moving so fast? But no, it's because they also have ideas, and their ideas are crumbling. They've foundered on reality and on people's objections, and they're falling apart. And the thing is, the Democrats have put a lot of effort into disguising their ideas as helping hands, as beneficial actions. And we talked before about the crying child, right? There's always, you say, well, Hamas just slaughtered over 1,000 people, children in front of their parents and women to death, and taking videos of it so they can brag about it to the folks back home. And the New York Times responds, oh, look, here's a child crying in Gaza because the Israelis are so mean. And that's a way of covering up an idea, right? Because children cried when Berlin was destroyed too, but Hitler had to go. And that's just a terrible thing about war, which we all hate. We shouldn't ever have wars, but we do. And it's not that I have no heart for the crying child. It's that I know that what the New York Times is really saying is not there's a crying child, how sad. They're saying Israel has no right to exist because it's aligned with the West, and the West is powerful, and therefore it's the enemy of that great fairness that people like the people at the New York Times plan to sprinkle upon the world like morning dew. So when you have that idea, which is an evil idea that blames a free, tolerant society like Israel for the crimes of psycho like Hamas, and you get caught out, there's nowhere for you to go. There's nowhere, you can only keep saying, look, crying child, because you've hidden your idea. And if you speak your idea out loud, you're done. You're finished. That's why, the reason the fight against Trump has been so hysterical is it wouldn't have been that hysterical if he had not been shattering this dying philosophy that was increasingly protected by fear and bullying and censorship. You wonder why there's Trump derangement syndrome, but there was Bush derangement syndrome before that, and Romney derangement syndrome, which was kind of hilarious. There was Reagan derangement too. It's the structure they're trying to defend, and the structure is crumbling, and all the shrill cries of racist, Nazi, deplorable, whatever, these were all signs that the only way for the left to protect this crumbling philosophy they had was to prevent an attack on it by intimidation and censorship. And that's why from Trump's first campaign, I kept telling you, it requires a man like Trump, as belligerent as he is, as uncaring about what people say about him as he is, it requires him to actually break through that fear and that censorship and get at the structure. People think the Democrats can't regroup because he's overwhelming them. But it's just not true. They have nothing to say. They have nowhere to go. They keep saying, things like, well, Trump doesn't really have a mandate, but he really does. He only won as narrowly as he did win, which is like he won 50% or so of the voting population, which is only 65% of the people. But that's missing the point. The point is they had actually intimidated people into silence, into not liking Trump, into thinking Trump was Hitler, and thinking if they voted for Trump, they were Hitler. But people broke through, enough people broke through. And once the dam is broken, all the people are going to join with him. His approval ratings are getting higher and higher, as they should. He's doing a great job. The cathedral of leftism has just come crashing down, and the Democrats haven't got another cathedral to go to. So they just have nothing they can say. And we're going to take a look at that today. Listen, if you want to be healthy, you got to get your fruits and veggies, but you can't eat enough of them because they dribble down your face, and I don't even want to talk about it. But Balance of Nature fruits and veggies is a convenient way to get whole fruits and vegetables daily, especially if you're focused on creating a healthier, happier lifestyle, which you should be. Nature's good at giving us the nutrients we need through our fruits and vegetables. So Balance of Nature takes fruits and vegetables, freeze dries them, turns them into a powder, and then puts them into a capsule. And you take your fruit and veggie capsules every day, and then your body knows what to do with them. Balance of Nature is just one ingredient of a balanced lifestyle and has no intention to replace a healthy diet, exercise, sleep, or any other healthy habits. It's intended to be used in concert with other healthy habits. And that's the way I use it. I exercise as much as I possibly can. I don't sleep much, but I try to take care of myself. And I love Balance of Nature because I can take it every day, and it's simple. And it's just something that, you can do without thinking too much. And I can take it with me on the road as well. And I'm getting my daily fruits and veggies. Go to balanceofnature.com and use promo code Klavan for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Plus, get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code Klavan. And I know what you're saying. This sounds great. How do you spell Klavan? It's Klavan. No E's in Klavan. I just make it look this incredibly easy. Chapter 1, Corruption, Delusion, Perversion. Sounds like the three stooges, the three horsemen of the Democrat apocalypse. So the Democrats, I'm sure you've heard the story of Samson at some point in your life, or maybe even seen the old Victor Mature movie. And the Democrats are like the Philistines in the temple when the temple comes tumbling down. I mean, this thing is just falling down on top of them. And again, it's not like they have another set of ideas to go to. And so it's almost cruel to mock them or take pleasure in their pain. But let's not let that stop us. The idea, the reason I'm so excited about this idea is I don't feel that this is an idea that we've had for the last 4 years or since Obama was elected. I feel that what's coming to an end, seriously, and I know this sounds grandiose, but I really think it's true. What's coming to an end, at least for now, is an idea that has been growing since at least the 18th century and maybe earlier, which is the unbelief in God, the unbelief in Christianity, the Judeo-Christian philosophy, the Bible. And this is what people have been talking about for centuries. When people cite Nietzsche, which they do all the time, the left is constantly citing Nietzsche, especially academics, and he said, God is dead, but his shadow is still there. But when the shadow fades away, as the shadow dies, the moral order that grew out of Christianity will die, and we will have to become God because God will be gone. So we'll become God, and we'll make our own moral order, and it won't be this silly thing about helping the weak and giving charity to the poor. It'll be the strong survive, and Nietzsche was only following on the heels of the Marquis de Sade, who basically said, now we can take pleasure in the pain of weaker people. That's why they call it sadism. We can take pleasure in the pain of weaker people because, there's no God. That's what nature does. The strong eat the weak, and we're just going to live like that. We're going to live according to Nietzsche. In fact, Dostoevsky had one of his characters say that once God is gone, once a belief in the afterlife is gone, not only will the morality of Christianity be thrown out, but the exact opposite morality will come into play, which will be egoism. It'll be self, my identity, my desires, my feelings will govern the universe, even to the point of criminality, said even Karamazov in Dostoevsky's novel. So I'm watching the protests that the Democrats are putting on, and I can't help. I mean, they're hilarious because these are things they don't understand really how completely the structure has collapsed. They still think that there is a group of people that can come together and hold this together. And the reason they think this is because Europe, which has died. Europe is dead. Europe died in 1945. It's just taken a long time to die. They've abandoned them, and they've just continued to abandon them. In fact, J.D. Vance made an incredible speech. I think it was this morning, our time. He made an incredible speech to the EU where he just said, we're giving you all this money and giving you all this support, and we keep doing it in the name of democracy. But are you living in a democracies anymore? You arrest people for praying silently outside abortion clinics. In Scotland, they tell people if they pray in their home too close to an abortion clinic, they can be arrested in their home for praying silently. I mean, and he was basically saying, get with it, and they can't get with it because they've essentially been overrun by all these migrants who've come in, and they're afraid of them and they don't know what to do. And so they can't get with it, but we can. We're a much bigger country. We're a much more tolerant country. We're a much easier country to assimilate into. I know a lot of Muslims who have come to America and they think this place is great. Nobody hates me. Nobody's telling me not to pray. I just have to do my job and people will treat me kindly. And that's pretty much true in America still. And we are also getting control of our borders. So they're left there with this kind of European protest in a country that is not going down the drain so fast. In Worcester, Massachusetts, which used to just be this kind of working class, run-of-the-mill Massachusetts neighborhood, they have now declared themselves a sanctuary city for mentally ill people who think they're a different sex than they are. So for trans people, and I don't like making fun of mentally ill people, but they've been mobilized to force their illness on us as reality. And so they had this city council vote, and all the people got up to testify before they voted, I think unanimously. Anyway, it was a big vote in favor of making this a transgender sanctuary, whatever the hell that means. But just listen to some of the people testifying before the city council. It's cut one.
I need the city to protect me because the federal government won't. And if you think you're afraid of Trump, you should see how afraid of Trump I am.
I don't want to spend an hour applying glitter on my face so that you will hear and see me.
Can you look at me and tell me how many of my friends need to die before you do anything?
Please wrap up.
Look at me.
I don't want to take an hour putting glitter on my face either, so I didn't. I solved that problem right there. But what you hear there is this entitlement and fear, right? The entitlement is my identity defines me, my desires define me, what I want to be defines me, instead of what we all know defines us is the battle between our moral selves, the image of God inside us, and the things that our body wants, which are kind of unbridled, right? The body has nature has no limits on what it wants. If it wants something, it wants everything. We just, if you eat cake and you like it, you'd eat cake all the time, but we don't do that because we don't want to be fat and we don't want to be unhealthy. And there are other things we don't do because we don't want to be immoral. So you have this entitlement because you're supposed to be able to define yourself. And then you have this fear because if anybody says, I don't think you are a woman just because you put on a blue wig, then suddenly you vanish. So they're afraid, right? So you have this entitlement, look at me, and this fear, I'm going to die if you don't help me. It's this weird kind of combination. Upstate New York, a school board, parents descend on the school board meeting en masse because they found in their elementary school, they found a book about gay people, about LGBTQ, featuring a naked guy and people in fetish gear. This is what they're giving to little kids in kindergarten. I'm not exaggerating. This is an elementary school. So here's just a little bit of that protest. This is cut 4.
It's important to know that when Dr. Potter said that no one has objected, we have the policy in place, right? The procedures in place. There's a That is not how you object. So if you cannot, again, follow by what we have asked you to do, we will ask for you all to, we will ask those people who cannot do that to be removed. We are here at our board meeting, right, conducting our business. You guys have
It's our board meeting.
So I don't know if you could hear that, but what they're saying is, there are rules and you have to do certain things and say certain things. And people are saying you're putting in our little children's, well, no, I'm sorry, that's not the process we have for making an objection. This is our board meeting. The people say this is our board meeting reminded me of a sort of less violent version of Ceausescu, I can't pronounce his name, where they suddenly found himself being booed in the street and a little bit later was carried out and executed. Hopefully this will be less violent, but I hope they are stopped from doing what they, and look, every time they get caught out at this stuff, it's always the same routine. It's always, we have a process. Oh, the process is over, get out. But it's also this attempt to hide the idea behind the individual incident, right? So they'll say, well, we'll say you're destroying women's sports by letting men play. And they'll say a vanishingly small number of transgender people want to play. Okay, so is that really what it's about? Taking care that those very, very, very few transgender people can jam a volleyball down a girl's face so hard she has to be taken to a hospital to reconstitute her face. Is that what it's really about? Making sure that one little person can play on a team he should never be playing on? But no, it's not. Yesterday in the New York Times, a former newspaper, they had an article about people who ghost people, when you date somebody and then you just disappear. And they said, 10 people who ghosted people and what they had to say, why they did it. So I'm glancing at that. That's kind of an interesting read. And there's 10 people, and the first one is straight, and the second one is gay, and the next one is transgender, and the next one is non-binary. And I think if there's so few of them, and you're only naming 10 people, why are so many of them not straight? It's because what they're saying is they're hiding an idea. This idea, it used to be called polymorphous perversity, that the body is in charge of your life. And if the body has a desire, and the body might desire anything. I mean, some guys will sleep with like a knot hole in a tree. If it desires it, that is the reality. That's the morality. We are rewriting the morality because God is dead. And it was really nasty of God to tell us we could only, assuage these desires on females who, damn it, have these little babies, and then we have to take care of them, and then we have to build societies that make sure that the women are taken care of. And darn it, it's just not right. We should be able to do anything we want, anytime we want, and that would make us all so much happier. And you can look at those people at that Worcester meeting and see just how much happier they are, right? Because they're hiding the philosophy. The philosophy is there, and it's always been there. And that's why when we have victories, like we had a victory after World War II, when the 1950s came and people came back and all they wanted was home and family and normalcy, and they came back with a very kind of conservative way of life that really restored America and made America incredibly great for about 10, 15 years. They still had not undermined that idea. That idea was still creeping into our colleges and into our movie industry and into our news industry. That idea that we're not living in a sinful world that requires courage and restraint and godliness and prayer. We're not living in that world. We're living in a world that's just matter that can be moved around, and we're so wise and bright that we're going to do it for you. Just don't look, just send us your money and we keep your money and we'll do these things and they'll be wonderful as long as you don't look at them. Because when you look at them, when you look at these books, whenever anybody at school board tries to read one of these books out loud, they've got to stop him because common sense, we are made, I was talking about this last week, we are made to recognize evil when we see it. We are made to recognize what's moral and what's not moral. When we hear these books, they can't hide anymore. So it all depends on silence, on censorship, on intimidation, because their power depends on these ideas. They've been in power for a long time and they don't want that power to go away. So now you have Elon Musk. What is he? He's the richest man who's ever lived on earth. He's obviously a brilliant guy in a certain way. I'm sure in other ways he's not that brilliant a guy, but he's a brilliant guy in a certain, engineering way that is really important. And he's duly appointed by the elected president to cut spending and waste, which people have been promising to do forever. And there are all these ridiculous programs that serve these leftist whims, and they count on are not seeing what they are and claiming that they're not really there. So if they can find one, they asked him about $50 million in condoms going to Gaza. And it turned out they weren't going to Gaza. They were going to some other country. And he said, Musk said, that's a lot of condoms, right? So he's now after the Department of Education, and Chris Rufo was just on Ben's show the other day exposing that what the DOE is spending money on. passing money onto like NGOs that teach pansexuality and anti-whiteness and, all the basic leftist nonsense that they've been shoving down their throats. And somebody, a friend of mine who used to work for the DOE, he said the first place they should go is into the printing office, which probably isn't a printing office anymore, to see the propaganda these people are sending out into our schools. So Musk and Doge are terminating all these programs and firing all these things, and the Obama courts are crying foul because they stole that money from taxpayers, so now it's theirs to do what they want. And so you have this kind of mind-boggling vision of like civil service members protesting in Washington, don't take our insidious, useless leftist jobs that we've been using to undermine the country. They're our jobs. Here's just a brief clip of a union process. It's hilarious. Cut 3.
Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? We'll fight against Doge. We'll fight Elon Musk. No Elon's kept within our walls. We'll fight from dawn to dusk.
So they think this is like the union days, the old days when women were working, piecemeal and in fire traps and all this, and had to be unionized to get them out of there. This is absurd. There shouldn't be any public unions anyway, and this is an absurd defense of waste and fraud and anti-Americanism and hatred. They have nothing else to do but to pretend that the ideas that they're defending, these old ideas that have been around now for hundreds of years, that they haven't fallen apart. There's nothing they can do. But the thing is, when you get down to the details, when you get down to the fact that Elon Musk and Doge are cutting waste and spending and not necessarily going through Congress to do it, here's Barack Obama in 2011 basically saying the same thing. And people have been saying this presidents have been saying this almost every time. Clinton said it. Here's cut 5, Barack Obama in 2011.
From the day I took office, one of the commitments that I made to the American people was that we would do a better job here in Washington in rooting out wasteful spending. We thought that it was entirely appropriate for our governments and our agencies to try to root out waste, large and small, in a systematic way. It means cutting some programs that I think are worthy, but we may not be able to afford right now. A lot of the action is in Congress and legislative, but in the meantime, we don't need to wait for Congress in order to do something about wasteful spending that's out there. We haven't seen as much action out of Congress as we'd like, and that's why we launched on our own initiative the campaign to cut waste.
So you may ask yourself, well, why didn't people protest then? Because he never did it. He never did any of those things. And, Al Gore actually cut a couple of, when he was vice president, he cut a couple of regulations, but not anything like what Trump was doing. Back in the 90s, you probably don't remember this, although I saw somebody post it online. There was a movie called Dave, in which Kevin Kline played an ordinary guy who is the double of the president. When the president is incapacitated, they push him in there so the people won't know he's gone and they won't get exposed in their corruption. And he basically invites his pal over, who's an accountant, his accountant over to cut the budget. And the guy looks at it and he says, if I ran my business like this, I'd go out of business. And I remember sitting in the movie theater and everybody just cracked up when he said that, because we all know that this is a problem, and it's gotten to be worse because they're not only throwing our money away, they're throwing it away on evil things that we hate. So the left is attacking Elon Musk. He's this, he's that, he's that, he's this. It's not about him. It is about this idea that they are going to bring perfection to the world. Their power depends on it. They are going to make the world a fair place, even if you don't like it. They were not elected to take care of you, the citizens who elected them. They were not elected to look out for your concerns. They are elected to look out for their much, much higher concerns. That's the idea, and that idea is falling apart. Now, you guys know I don't sleep much, but I do have to sleep sometimes. I know it's hard to believe, but yes, sometimes I have to go to sleep, and that's why I love Beam's Dream Powder. It's a science-backed, healthy hot cocoa for sleep. It's completely transformed my nighttime routine, when I need to sleep. I don't want to take one of those sleep aids that can cause next day grogginess. Dream just contains a powerful all-natural blend of reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. And you can look up every one of those ingredients. You will find it will help you. Dream powder is also tested for high-quality efficacy and formulated to ease your body into rest, supporting all 4 stages of the sleep cycle to help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. And the best part is it really tastes good. I'm talking about sea salt caramel, brownie batter. I haven't tried that one. That sounds great. Vanilla chai and their original cinnamon cocoa. Each serving is only 15 calories, 0 sugar. Just mix it with hot water or milk, and you've got yourself the most delicious bedtime drink that actually helps you sleep better. If you want to try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder, get up to 40% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/Klavan and use code Klavan at checkout. And I know you're thinking, how do you spell Beam? It's BEAM. No, you're not. You don't care. It's BEAM.com/Klavan, and you use code Klavan for up to 40% off. So what you really want to know is how to spell Klavan. It's KLAVAN. Chapter 2, Wake Me When the Crisis is Over. Now, the media, the news media, has been both the defensive line protecting this idiot structure of ideas, and it's been the offensive line running over anyone who opposed them or tried to attack them, right? That's where people got attacked. And if you ever wondered, I'm sure you've all wondered, and I've wondered certainly, why Republicans are so weak and slimy and rhino-y. It's because if you're in Washington, D.C., this protective shell of the media is there that you can't help but think is the voice of the people. You can't help but think, oh my God, they're going to tear us apart in the press. And it's only now that it's somewhat beginning to dawn on them that press doesn't matter anymore because of us, because of the DailyWire, because of Joe Rogan, because of all the, Megyn Kelly, all the people who have set up shop independently and taken them down. And we still, and this is really important, we still do not have the reporting power, all of us together, truly do not have the reporting power of the New York Times. The New York Times can, have 25 people parachute into Alaska and find out, that the vice presidential candidate that they don't like is corrupt. They can do that and go through all the papers, and they have done it and will do it again. We don't have that kind of reporting power. The one thing we have that is so important and especially became weaponized once Elon Musk took over Twitter and turned it into X is we have the power to expose them. We have the power to expose their lies. We have the power to show you what they said 5 years ago. We have the power to show you that Joe Biden did worse than anything they're accusing Trump of or anything like this. And yeah, we have to be concerned about the First Amendment because if we we know they want to ruin the First Amendment, but if we say to ourselves, oh, they want to ruin it, so we'll destroy it too, then we'll really be in trouble because we're not going to hold power forever either. We're going to lose eventually too. And we want to make sure that First Amendment is still in place and that people still have a First Amendment mentality, which is what gives the First Amendment power. So, and again, just to reference that speech that Vance made before the EU, he's talking about the people being arrested for praying silently. And I once asked Constant Kizin of the Trigonometry Boys, I once said, how can they endure this in England? And he said, nobody cares. Nobody cares. You've got arrested and put in jail or fined for praying silently outside an abortion clinic, not obstructing anybody. Too bad. They just don't care. So on Tuesday, the White House demanded that the AP, the Associated Press, alter its style guide. The Associated Press has a style guide that is used in newsrooms across the country. I mean, it's so very, very widely. It's not just for the AP, it's for everybody. And it's something, how do we refer to this? And they demanded that the AP stop referring to the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of Mexico and call it the Gulf of America. And the AP refused. And so Trump barred AP reporters from an Oval Office interview with Elon Musk, which was a very exciting interview. Musk was really great. He had this kid on his shoulders. It was a wonderful interview, but they barred the AP because they wouldn't call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America as they should. And the thing is, So the AP responds. This is the AP's response. As a global news organization, the Associated Press informs billions of people around the world every day with factual, nonpartisan journalism. It is alarming that the Trump administration would punish AP for its independent journalism. Well, BS, right? BS. The Isaac Shore of the New York Post pointed out that the AP has never been nonpartisan. They've supported abortion. They've supported transgenderism. They have said in their style book, and remember, this is a style book that everybody's looking at, that you have to call sexually butchering a child, what is it? Gender care, gender affirming care, and talk about, they support all abortion. They have talked about the charismatic and shrewd terrorist leader, not Hassan Nasrallah, and all the stuff. They're totally, totally biased. And so when leftist activist Caitlin Collins said to Kathleen Leavitt, the new White House spokesperson, he said, how could you ban us from this? She said, look, it's a privilege to come into these Oval Office meetings, and we don't have to let you in. Still, I'm not losing any sleep over this, but Trump has to tread carefully. It's no good when we destroy the First Amendment either. But the thing is, I think he should have let the AP in. He should have let the AP in, and then he should have mocked them relentlessly and attacked them relentlessly. But he should continue to hold the press to account, short of censoring them or hobbling them, right? I mean, I think we have to respect the press, even though we don't respect them personally. Individually, we have to respect the idea of the press. I love the fact that he's suing the Pulitzer Prize board because they awarded people for their stories about Russian collusion. He said, well, that was a lie. Russian collusion was a lie. And so why did you award them? He's suing them, and a court just refused to throw an appellate court just refused to throw the case out, saying, no, this is a legitimate suit. If you're rewarding people for slandering someone else, that's not part of the First Amendment, or it may not be. At least it has to be tried. So the press has been, we have to face the fact that the press is now the enemy of the people, just like Trump said it is. It is a single monolithic block pushing these leftist ideas, which are, it's one thing to say, well, Marx said this, and, somebody else said this, and then they took Freud and they rejiggered Freud. All that stuff is important, and a lot of books have now been written, including Knowles's book on free speech. A lot of books have been written at how one idea led to another. But all of these ideas, you have to remember this, all of these ideas were one idea working itself out. And yes, they work themselves out in terms of people, individuals coming forward and thinking the next thought, because it takes a brainy person to move on to the next thought. But those ideas were going to work themselves out no matter what. It's just like at a moment when art, painting starts to fall apart because there's a camera now. There's going to be a Picasso, a brilliant person who brings on the destruction of the art form, whose beautiful paintings, some of them beautiful, bring on the destruction of the art form. There's going to be a Marlon Brando who turns acting from the old acting style to the other style. So all these people, Marx and all of the ones who follow them, they were just people who were passing on the torch of this idea, which is God is dead, now we're God, now we have to build a moral system where we get to choose morality, where we get to perfect the world, and we don't have to believe in this moral system that is out there somehow approved by our Creator. And that's the idea that's working itself out all the time. It's working itself out in terms of Marxism, in terms of sexual liberation, in terms of all these things. So judges are blocking all these cost-cutting initiatives and trying to protect things and saying, well, you can't look at the Treasury records, which Doge has to look at to find out where the money's going, which is ridiculous, by the way. There's over 100,000 employees in the Treasury. They can all look at the records. A guy appointed by the president to look at the records should be allowed to look at the records. But anyway, a judge said this thing and said you can't look at the records. And J.D. Vance said on X, if a judge tried to tell a general how to conduct a military operation, that would be illegal. If a judge tried to command the attorney general on how to use her discretion as a prosecutor, that's also illegal. Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. So, of course, the press, this is from our friends at Newsbusters, the press reacted in that kind of diverse way where you can really hear them thinking, each one of them individually in his own independent way. Here's just a cut of some of the samples of these various opinions that the press expresses. Cut 6.
New warnings of a constitutional crisis just weeks into Trump's second term.
The stage is set for a constitutional crisis.
could this signal the start of a constitutional crisis?
Legal experts say our country could be headed toward a constitutional crisis.
They're calling this a constitutional crisis.
This is a constitutional crisis?
I am unapologetic in suggesting we are in a constitutional crisis right now.
Are we already in a constitutional crisis?
Those two words, right? Constitutional crisis.
Yeah, who would have thought of it? This independent press that the AP tells us about is not an independent press. They're a monolith, and we are the ones who stood up against them. Basically, the independents, the podcasters, the small-time YouTube guys who, as I keep saying, they were like the British marching in line, the biggest empire in the world, and we kept popping up from behind the trees and taking pot shots at them, and now they're gone. Now they're really on the run. So the Wall Street Journal, I have to say, because, in a way, the editorial board, because they don't like Donald Trump, actually wrote a really good article about this because they were fair. And they said, there's not a constitutional crisis. Trump is sometimes breaking the law to tee up cases to go to the Supreme Court, but that's not a constitutional crisis. They're saying that his actions mostly rest on strong legal ground, and there are three kinds of actions. One is to pause discretionary spending to ensure it complies with the president's priorities. Democrat state attorneys general say this is illegal, and Judge John McConnell on Monday agreed, but this is something that is obviously okay. There's nothing in the Constitution that says he can't pause spending in order to check on it. A second category, they say, are decisions on more debatable legal grounds, such as effectively dismantling the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and USAID. Congress established these agencies, and Congress might have to eliminate them. It's less clear whether a president can order employees to cease doing their jobs, which I think he can. And the third thing he's been doing is clear violations of current law with a goal of going to the Supreme Court. It would be a constitutional crisis if the Supreme Court said he has to do something and he didn't do it. Biden did that, bragged about it with student loans, and so that would be something that we don't want to see Trump do either. I mean, it shouldn't be done. But let's not forget, okay, as we're fighting this media, the media itself has been the enemy of the First Amendment. As they're crying out for the First Amendment, we have to remember their hysteria over misinformation, which was their hysteria that we, the DailyWire and Joe Rogan and all the others, Megyn Kelly, all the others, that we were taking their power away. That was what it was really about. We were taking the power away to act as the defensive and offensive line, protecting the cathedral of leftist thought. That's why they were complaining. And let us not forget at all, John Kerry, who you may remember was at one point the Secretary of State, he was in Davos last year, and this is what he said about the new media. Cut 7.
It's really hard to govern today. You can't, there's no, the referees we used to have to determine what's a fact and what isn't a fact are kind of, been eviscerated to a certain degree. And people go and people self-select where they go for their news or for their information. And then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years I've been involved in this. And there's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have, some accountability on facts, et cetera. But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence.
So I'll give you a minute to dry your tears that John Kerry is having a hard time building consensus and the press isn't helping him, which is what he thinks the press should do. And that people are self-selecting. They're choosing which media to listen to. And the First Amendment is blocking his attempts to crush these out of existence. So we have nothing to learn from the left about the First Amendment, but we do have to protect it. And this is important. And we shouldn't, we should keep our eye on Trump, and power, it just corrupts everybody. But still, as of right now, he's doing exactly what he should do, which is dragging them out on the carpet. Don't call them out on the carpet, drag them out on the carpet and kick some sense into them, because they're liars, they're enemies of the people, they're the monolithic defenders of a bad idea whose time has passed. Did you know that American homeowners have over $32 trillion in equity? And criminals are targeting it with a growing scam the FBI calls house stealing. This scam allows criminals to transfer your title out of your name using a one-page document they file at the county. Then they can take out loans against it or even sell it behind your back. And the most concerning part is you won't find out about it until collection or foreclosure notices start arriving in your mailbox, leaving you with a financial and legal nightmare. The best way to protect your equity is with Home Title Lock's exclusive $1 million triple lock protection. This service offers 24/7 monitoring, urgent alerts, and if fraud should occur, their U.S.-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix the fraud and restore your title. When was the last time you checked on your title? If you're like me, the answer is never. And that's exactly what scammers are counting on. The good news is we've partnered with Home Title Lock to offer you all 25% off their services. So go to HomeTitleLock.com, use my promo code Klavan25 to save 25%. And you'll also get a free title history report to ensure you're not already a victim. And make sure you check out the $1 million triple lock protection details when you get there. There's a link below. That's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code Klavan25. Chapter 3, Winning. Now, you always have to remember, I've talked about this since the start of the Trump administration. I've been talking about it since a long time ago, the W administration. The strategy of the media is not to get to buy into every shriek of, oh, it's a crisis. Oh, this is, people will die, which was the Obama thing. If you don't do what we want, people will die. It's the end of democracy. It's a constitutional crisis. The idea is not to get you to buy into every one of those. The idea is to create a constant drumbeat of hysteria, because I know a lot of Democrats, and they fall for it. They're totally afraid that if their daughter gets pregnant and it's a pregnancy that's going to kill her because it's not, working out right, that she won't be able to fix that pregnancy, stop that pregnancy, which would result in her death. All this kind of crazy talk that they have. They're afraid of, gay people are going to be arrested for being gay and all this stuff, none of which, of course, is happening. So the thing is to create a sense of crisis and fear. If they were honestly reporting what Trump is doing, they would report what Trump says, then they would get somebody to say, I don't like what he says, and then they would get somebody to say, I do like what he says, and then they would get a third person to say, what he's really saying is this. And that would be a fair thing, and you could read it, and each person could hear different things. But Trump right now is obviously on a roll. He's doing great work. I've been having the time of my life. I mean, I have a hard time writing satires, the opening satire, because there's not that much to laugh at because things are going really well. But what they're going to do is they're going to continually tell you what is the evil thing that is going to happen if Trump does what he says he's going to do. And, if he closes the border, suddenly we won't be able to, have our lawns mowed anymore. That's basically what's going to happen. And if you read the New York Times, it's one story after another doing that, which is lying because they don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes what Trump does works out really, really well after they told us it wouldn't. So now he's been in touch with Putin and Zelensky trying to arrange peace in Ukraine, which obviously would be a good thing. And listen, I detest Putin. I hated this thing on the right where suddenly Putin was a great guy. Putin is a monster. He's a gangster. He's an old KGB torturer. He's not a good person, and he would kill. Talk about the press. He would throw you off the roof just for disagreeing. Looking at him sideways, he would kill you. He'd kill you. He'd kill your family. He's a terrible, terrible human being. He should never have invaded Ukraine. Yes, we made mistakes. Saying we would put Ukraine in NATO and then never doing it, so they were undefended. And of course, the Afghanistan retreat, which basically invited him in, and Biden saying, oh, well, if it's a little incursion, that would be okay, basically inviting him in. Now he's in. Now he's gone in there, and he's going to get some of the things that he went in there for. And, Trump wants the killing to stop and the spending to stop, and it has to. It has to stop. We cannot fight a forever war in Ukraine, and it's not Trump's fault it started, but he's going to stop it. So he says he's going to stop it. This is what he said. This is cut 8.
We had a great call, and it lasted for a long time, over an hour this morning. I also had with President Zelensky a very good call after that. And I think we're on the way to getting peace. I think President Putin wants peace, and President Zelensky wants peace, and I want peace. I just want to see people stop getting killed.
So, people said, he's already given away the farm to Putin. He's just already said he's going to give him the Donbass. He's going to, make sure that they keep some of the things they took and all this. But at the same time, J.D. Vance has been saying, everything's on the table. Military action's on the table, all kinds of financial restrictions might be on the table. We're going to go in there and negotiate. So we don't know what's going to happen. So reporting that it's all already he's surrendered or whatever is ridiculous. I think it's going to be hard to get everything that I would like to see. I would like to see Putin push back. I mean, I would, but I don't think that's going to happen. And I think the killing has to stop. I think Trump is right about that. And so, we have to see what happens. But before it happens, to tell us it's going to be a disaster, to tell us that Trump is giving in, is just lying. It's just lying. And the same is true with, now RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard have both been confirmed. Another big win for the president. And we're hearing, you'll never get a vaccine. My favorite meme, and this was just a joke, was now that RFK Jr. Is, head of Health and Human Services, we have to it's our responsibility to make fun of fat people. I thought that was a good idea. And, we don't know what's going to happen with them. They're the two people I was most worried about. But let's not forget, Chuck Schumer is protesting and all this stuff, but Chuck Schumer voted for, Arkham Asylum escapee Richard Levine. This guy walks around in a woman's admiral outfit saying he wants to cut the testicles off little boys, really until Batman drags him back to Arkham Asylum. He voted for him. So they have nothing to stand for. The press, the Trump administration is so far doing great. The price of eggs went up, so they blame Trump. Barack Obama went 8 years saying everything he did wrong was the fault of George W. Bush. But even after 20 days, everything that happens now is Trump's fault. That's the thing they're trying to do. They're trying to create a sense of disaster. But if they told the truth, the real story in the news might sound something like this. Cut 11.
We're going to win so much. We're going to win at every level. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. We're going to win economically. We're going to win with the economy. We're going to win with military. We're going to win with healthcare and for our veterans. We're going to win with every single facet.
Zippity-dee-da, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. Yay! You'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore.
I feel pretty, oh so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and gay.
We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
So I know you're all walking around completely in tune with your metabolism. You know exactly what your bodies are doing at any given moment. Nah, you don't. I don't, I know. But I finally found something that helps me understand what's going on with my metabolism instead of just guessing. It's called Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach that measures your metabolism through your breath. With just a simple breath into the device each morning, you will know exactly what's happening with your metabolism and whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Plus, the companion app then provides you with a personalized nutrition plan for the day based on your measurements. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It powers everything you do. When you optimize your metabolic health, you can experience improved energy levels, better fitness results, and enhanced sleep quality. I have personally found that understanding my metabolism really helps me in my approach to health. It even adapts to your unique needs daily and adjusts recommendations to help maintain your metabolic health, energy, and even manage cravings. Take the next step to improving your health. Go to lumen.me/Klavan to get 20% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/Klavan for 20% off your purchase. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, you told me how to spell Lumen. You're always telling me how to spell things, but you never, ever tell me how to spell Klavan. Here's how.
There are no easy things.
Final chapter, Freedom Are Us. So here's the kind of catch in all of this and all the winning. All this time, conservatives have been griping about big government and liberty. We talk about liberty. That's the thing that we want. But liberty is you. And our idea is not a big idea. I mean, it is a big idea in the sense that it depends on this sense of human beings as being sacred, images of God, unique individual images of God. But the corollary of that idea, the theory that comes out of that idea, that each of us should have as much freedom as humanly possible, as socially possible, to make the choices that we want. And you hear a lot of people trying to get around that, saying, no, you only can choose what's right. Freedom is the freedom to choose what's right. And that's not true. You have to be able to choose what's wrong in order to be free to choose what's right. So assuming that this goes on and Trump really does reduce government and you become more free, the question is, what are you going to do with your freedom? Because we can't get addicted to griping about the left if they're holding rallies where 15 people show up, and they are. Obviously there's always a danger when they have so much, cultural power and communicative power, communications power. There's always a danger of their resurgence. And even though ideas die, they can bully people into keeping them going for a long time. The Soviet Union did, Hitler and the Nazis did. And so, the question is now, what are you going to do with your freedom? And the thing is, you have to build something. You have to create something, a family, a marriage, a business, a nest egg, an idea, a charity, whatever it is. You have to now do something instead of just being on social media and complaining about what some idiot leftist did is not really using the freedom that you have. You have to make something positive. Not the guy next to you. You have to do it. And, the left's idea has failed, but the right's idea begins, I believe, that it's underlaid by faith in God, a faith in a moral order, faith that this sense that we have that we are something beautiful and yet our own desires get in the way, and that we have to mitigate our desires. We have to restrain ourselves and act with restraint and act with courage when we're afraid, and act in order to speak the truth and do all these things. And I think all of that starts with God. All of it starts with the idea that suffering is bad, but it's not the worst thing, because there is another kingdom beside this one in which your suffering is counted to your good. And the moral order may not look the same to God as it looks to us, but we have the human version of it, and we know we're not just making it up. It's not just relative. It's not just here for now. It is something that we perceive and are able to perceive, and it develops, and it has gray areas and all that stuff. So I got a letter, speaking of God, I got a letter from a listener, and it didn't come through the Klapbacks thing, so I won't give his name because he was writing just to me personally through my website. And he said, I haven't had any issues with things you've said until I listened to your last podcast where you sounded like someone from the State Department. Can you please restore my confidence in you by stating categorically who Jesus is and what Christianity means? And what he's, I assume, referring to is the fact that I said, look, your church, your orthodoxy, your theories, your shout-nots, those are the map, but Jesus is the territory. Jesus is God as we know him, as human beings know him. That is, I think, something that all Christians agree on, is that, it says in John 1:18, no one has ever seen God, but the one and only Son, who is himself God and is in closest relationship with the Father, has made him known. Now, look, even if you're not a Christian, you can understand that. You can understand that God is unfathomable to our minds. I don't think you have to be Christian, but what we're saying is we can know morality as humans know it, we can know God as a human being, as what a perfect human being would be like if he were God. We can know God in that way, and that's what Jesus Christ represents, and that's, in my opinion, what Jesus Christ is. So then you ask me, well, who is this exactly, and what are the rules, and what am I supposed to be doing? And no, that's a very hard thing to do. What you have to do is you have to come to know him. You have to come to know this person, right? If you knew me personally, right, everybody might see me differently. You would say, I like that Klavan because he's always find something to laugh about, or I don't like that Klavan. He's shallow because he's always laughing at things. He doesn't take anything seriously. Or you might say, boy, he's a really deep person because he doesn't take anything totally seriously. You might say a lot of different things, but if you said he's a grim-faced guy who never laughs, then you wouldn't be reacting to me. You wouldn't be seeing me properly, right? That's not the kind of person I am. You can see the kind of person I am. And it's the same thing with God, and I would say with Christ. I don't want to be too ecumenical. I think we're talking about Jesus Christ. But, this is the person you have to get to know, and you have ways of getting to know him. And, that knowledge, that relationship goes beyond what the Pope says. It goes beyond what your pastor says. It goes beyond what Thomas Aquinas says or, any other theologian. You have to get to know him, and you do that through prayer, and you do it through going to church and sharing prayer with other people. You do it through ritual, which helps, I think, a lot, and through Christly acts of goodwill and charity. And these are the ways you come to know, who God is and what he expects of you. And I think that is going to be part of what everybody's doing. It's not supposed to be a breeze. We want to get the government off our necks. We want to get them off our backs. They have been obscene. It is obscene that the British arrest people for praying silently. It's obscene that the Scots, threaten to arrest people for praying in their home silently. It's obscene that the Germans shut people down if they oppose abortion or if they say something that's not feminist enough. I mean, these things, this is obscene. The Europe has died. Europe has passed away. But America has not passed away. America is doing quite well, thank you very much. And it's still the essential nation. It's still the nation that has to stand in order for freedom to stand, in order for Western ideas to stand. And if there is a revival here, and I keep saying that it's coming and now has come, the co-founder, Larry Sanger, is that his name? The co-founder of Wikipedia, who was a philosopher, and a guy, he called himself a skeptical philosopher, has now said himself that he is a Christian. He has philosophized himself right into Christianity, as you do, I think, if you're honest, and certainly into theism, if you're honest. And so, these are the things that are on you. They're on you. They're not on anybody else. It's not about yelling at the guy next to you because he's gay or drinks too much or is sinful in your mind. It's not that's not going to move you closer to knowing God even a little bit. It's not a little bit. That's why you're told not to judge. It is really taking things now on yourself. What are you doing with your life? And that's a tough thing. I mean, it's a tough thing because it's so easy. It's so easy to rant and rail. And one of the reasons I stopped doing this show 4 days a week is because I told Jeremy, I don't want to rant and rail all the time. I don't have that many opinions. I have one opinion. I have one opinion. People should be free. People should be as free as it's possible for them to be, which means government should be as small as it can be, as it's possible for it to be. That's it. That's my opinion. And I think that now, since we have our first chance since Reagan, and Reagan failed at it, we have our first chance since Reagan to cut the government back. You hopefully will be more free. And now's the time to ask you, what are you going to do with that freedom? Who are you going to be? And who is the God who is going to take you there? It's Valentine's Day, and here's a deal you'll love. Our President's Day sale starts now. And you may say, well, that makes no sense to start your President's Day sale on Valentine's Day. It doesn't matter. All you have to know is get 40% off a full year of DailyWire Plus. That makes sense. Why so early? Because for the first time in 4 years, we actually have a president worth celebrating. That's 40% off all new annual memberships, 1 full year of breaking news, culture-shaping entertainment, investigative journalism, and live chats with me. I mean, come on. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code DW40 and save 40% today. That's dailywire.com/subscribe. Promo code DW40. Klavan Klapbacks.
Take a deep breath for just a moment and ponder big balls.
Big balls.
Big balls.
Big balls.
Big balls. Big balls here.
Wow. My mouth's watering just thinking about those balls.
I don't know why they put that on my show, but apparently that's what came to mind. Klavan Klapbacks at dailywire.com. Klavan Klapbacks. It's Klavan with a K, Klapbacks with a K at dailywire.com. Write in. Tell us what you think. Ask us questions, personal questions, whatever you want, political questions. We will try and answer them if we can. Question today from Bob Larden. He says, you stated on your last show that it's a man's responsibility to find a woman who will respect him. My wife, who adores you and gives grace, claimed you misspoke and would explain yourself until you said it twice. It is not our responsibility to find a woman who respects us, but instead we treat them with respect and they respond to it. I disagree with you. I'm sorry. I don't think that's right. I cut this letter down. He was talking about his personal experience of finding a second wife and treating her in a better way, and that gave her respect. Look, you should be a person a woman can respect. That goes without saying. I shouldn't have to say that. If you're a jerk, if you're a philanderer, if you're an abuser, if you're a bully, if you're, somebody who doesn't let your wife develop and breathe and live into herself, then you don't deserve respect, and the whole idea is out of whack. But there are many, many women, I'm afraid, who pick on men and who think it's their job to sort of nag them into being better than they are and to change them and mold them and shape them and set the rules. I've been to, I was at a wedding once where the bride stood up and said, "I rule the roost." And I just thought, yeah, get the hell. If you rule the roost, just fly away. So what I was saying is you have to find a woman. Look, if a woman doesn't respect you, she shouldn't marry you. That's how she should express her disrespect. But having taken you on and decided to be your life partner, she should treat you with respect. That is what men need. It is what makes them, it's what they rise into it. It is what makes them the people they are. So no, I think that if you have to earn the respect of your wife, obviously you don't want to sacrifice the respect of your wife, but she should respect you enough so that even when you make mistakes, even when you go awry, she still thinks that there is something there that she loves and is worth saving. From Scale Your Solid, I watch your show every week and often find more spiritual insights from what you have to say than most church sermons. I have a few questions about your thoughts on the popularity of smut fiction among young women, particularly the type popularized by books like 50 Shades of Grey. The smut concept seems to me an inversion of the classic Beauty and the Beast story. Instead of a beautiful woman civilizing a wild man, a bestial and violent man strips the honor, civility, and often even innocence from a young woman. That's actually not true. I actually skimmed. I couldn't read 50 Shades of Grey. It was just so badly written and so banal. But actually, it is the Beauty and the Beast story. It's just done through S&M. But this smut that appears also in romance fiction of men like taking women and all this stuff, it's a fantasy that grows out of, there's a word for it that right now skips my mind. There's a scientific word for it if we need one, basically that means that there's a desire that's already there, but the desire goes to its extreme. And this is one of the reasons why we have to have restraint, because nature has no borders. If you are a moth that wants to mate with darker moths because maybe you have to live in a darker environment, if you are a moth that does that, and I present you with a black moth that doesn't even exist in nature, but it's darker than anything else, you will go after that black moth. And so there is in sex this idea of the active and passive principle, and that active principle turns into, if you take it to its furthest extreme, and the passive principle turns into being. And so there's desires that are naturally there in men and women have these extremes that we entertain ourselves with when men watch, and it's filled with violence. And when women read these romance novels in which the guy just, basically, or especially in this 50 Shades of Grey, doesn't her, but he beats her. And, if they have that fantasy and take that fantasy into real life, they're going to be sorry, because a guy who beats you is not going to suddenly stop beating you. He's just going to beat you worse and worse. And in the story, it is Beauty and the Beast. She essentially civilizes him, but in real life, that's not what's going to happen. But that's where it comes from. It's just a phenomenon of nature. And it's one of the reasons, men want a lot of different women, and they have to tame themselves in order to have a civilized relationship in which children and women can thrive. And that's part of life. And we all have these things. I got to stop there, but we're going to go into member block unless you're not a member, in which case there's like a trap door. It's a spiritual trap door. You can't see it, but it's still going to open. The darkness that surrounds you may be spiritual, but it will enclose you. The darkness of Klavanlessness is both endless and eternal. You can't see a thing. So become a member. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code Klavan at checkout, and you will get 2 months free. If you haven't done that, fare thee well. God knows if you'll survive another week. But for the rest of you, come on over to Member Block.